Thank you for joining us for this fourth webinar on Catholic social teaching and investment in climate. I hope that you could have joined us for some of the previous ones as well, but if not, they're all available on our YouTube channel if you search for Operation Noah. This is the final workshop in our series that have been working through the Catholic social teaching toolkit that we've produced on investment in climate solutions. And this is the final chapter that looks at peace and what that might tell us about how we think about how we use our money as Christian organisations. First, I'll tell you a little about Operation Noah. Operation Noah is an ecumenical Christian charity that is faith-motivated, science-informed and hope-inspired. And we're here to challenge and encourage churches and religious institutions to do more to tackle the climate crisis. So be that with their finances or using their voice and speaking up for greater action. And today, we're really pleased to hear from two speakers. The first is Bakani, who is the campaign officer here at Operation Noah, who has been working on this Catholic social teaching toolkit, and she will guide us through this today's chapter. And also Sister Susan Francois, who is the congregational treasurer of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace. And we're really pleased to have her with us today to tell us a little more about how they align their investments with their mission. And their mission is to promote peace through justice. And that's a central part of their calling. And I think we were just saying before this call started that given the headlines that we're seeing from around the world, particularly from the Middle East at the moment, this work seems very, very much needed, and pleased to be spending the time today hearing from Sister Susan. So thank you for that. And there will be a chance for small group discussion as we vote. So I'll hand over now to Bakani, who's going to guide us with a prayer. Thank you, Bakani.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for the introduction. And I thought it would be good to start with a prayer that might be familiar to many of us. So we'll start with St. Francis of Assisi's prayer for peace. Let's take our time to ground ourselves in God's hope and start our prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, the truth. Where there is doubt, the faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that we may not seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. So I'll start today by just giving you a brief overview of the toolkit, as this has been the theme for our webinars, and I just want to provide an overview so you may have a look at it if you haven't already done so. So it is available to download on our Operation Noah website. So if you just search Operation Noah, Catholic Social Teaching Toolkit, it will show up. And the toolkit follows in a rich tradition of wisdom, guiding us on how we apply the gospel message to the pressing social, economic, and political challenges of our time. We started researching and published the toolkit even before we had Pope Leo, who obviously chose his name as a reference to Pope Leo the 12th, I want to say, who is seen as the father of Catholic social teaching, and its roots stretch back to the teachings of Jesus, the early church, and papal writings, and the Vatican guidance, emphasizing right relationship with God, each other, and our planet. So we think about how we have responsibility to use our resources, whether as individuals or within organizations, to contribute to a fairer and more peaceful, greener world. So this toolkit aims to align investing strategies with CST principles and is designed for financial directors, treasurers, trustees, and committee members within Catholic dioceses, organizations, congregations, and religious orders. It's worth noting that the toolkit is intended to provide general guidance and for educational information. It doesn't constitute or intend to constitute any investment advice or any investment service, and rather we advise that it is used with your professional financial advisors and portfolio managers. So the toolkit is split into 7 key chapters, each of which follows the core pillars of Catholic social teaching and its relevance to addressing the climate crisis. This was the specific focus of this toolkit, and each chapter uses the See, Judge, Act framework as a methodology which is really familiar to those who know CST, to explore how investors might discern their impact. And so today we'll be going through the final chapter on peace, and you'll be able to see how those chapters explore our, those pillars are explored in the rest of the toolkit too. So today we're going to explore this vital aspect of Catholic social teaching, the principle of peace, and how it profoundly intersects with the climate crisis and our investment strategies. The Catholic Church consistently upholds peace as a fundamental human right and a prerequisite for human development. As the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, respect for and development of human life require peace. This isn't just about the absence of war, it is also about a just order within human society, which is actualized by people as they thirst after a greater sense of justice. And Pope Benedict XVI chose this theme as his theme for the World Day of Peace in 2020, directly linking protection for the environment with peace. And he said, if you want to cultivate peace, then you need to protect creation. And the pursuit of peace is deeply rooted in scripture and in Judeo-Christian tradition. And so we consider the words from Colossians 3, which offer a beautiful vision of how we are called to live and interact. So we say, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. So this is a really powerful exhortation and inspiration. And so when we look at investing through the lens of peace as illuminated by Catholic social teaching, we see that it is not merely a financial decision, it is a moral imperative guided by love. And while the toolkit focuses on the broader impact of climate change on peace, it's worth noting how resource extraction, particularly for fossil fuels, has historically been and continues to be relentlessly linked with conflict. Similarly, the competition for resources in regions like the Congo further underscores this connection. These situations demonstrate how the pursuit and control of natural resources can can destabilize regions and foster violence. So we're called to consider how we might intervene. So how does this climate crisis also threaten peace? So this is a video that I'm going to share with you, developed by Earthrise in partnership with Oxfam, and it highlights how climate change can lead to further conflict and instability. So as we watch it, you might want to consider how investment in peace relates to community and environmental well-being.
Around the world, conflicts are on the rise.
Civil war in Sudan.
The war in Gaza.
The civil war in Syria. War in Ukraine.
The causes are numerous and complex, but there's one thing making them all worse: climate change.
Conflict and climate change has left millions in jeopardy of starvation.
Our changing climate can fuel armed conflicts.
Droughts, floods, scarce resources, and mass displacement. These all push people into more desperate situations, increasing the risk of armed conflict and social unrest. Here's how climate change and conflict intersect. In some regions, like East Africa, the climate crisis is escalating conflict, and in others, making it more likely.
Countries like Sudan, going through conflicts and suffering from the climate crisis, need to be dealt with in urgency. It's now clear more than ever that climate change induces conflicts and vice versa.
Conflicts also make climate adaptation much more difficult. It can be hard and dangerous to rebuild after a flood, grow food during a drought, or find safe shelter during a monsoon. And both conflict and climate change can impact vital resources.
Nigeria, South Sudan, Yemen, and Afghanistan are on the brink of starvation.
More than 18 million Sudanese are facing acute hunger because of the civil war in Sudan.
This can exacerbate already existing tensions and reduce reliable access to life-saving services like emergency healthcare or law enforcement. The result? Well, it can make domestic and gender-based violence more likely, as well as larger-scale violent conflict.
You're going to find the origins of the political conflict in Sudan were due to climate change. For example, agriculture, the backbone of Sudan economy, is extremely impacted by the floods, which are the impacts of climate change, and also impacted by the conflict and the political instability in Sudan.
It may be no coincidence that many regions embroiled in conflict are also the worst affected by climate change. Of the 25 countries facing the greatest climate change threats, 14 are experiencing conflict, and it's a vicious cycle. When countries experience conflict, their governments and institutions can begin to fail. That means less relief for those who need it, and fewer protections against things getting even worse.
Humanitarian assistance from international community is needed in Sudan now more than ever.
Because conflict and climate feed into each other, they can't be treated in isolation, especially since countries most affected by climate change often do the least to contribute to emissions. That's why countries in the global north, often spared the worst effects of a crisis they primarily caused, have an obligation to remedy the harm they are responsible for, especially to countries dealing with twin crises that play off of each other.
It is crucial for everyone, everywhere, to advocate for climate justice and climate solution, urgent climate solutions, especially in global south countries like mine, Sudan.
So in the toolkit, we share resources like the video we just saw in the section of C, which allows us to learn about realities on the ground, so that we're looking at a more holistic picture than necessarily financial spreadsheets, important as they are, might provide. So in the judge section, we then critically reflect through the lens of faith and CST principles, asking questions that you might like to consider as a finance committee, and alongside your financial advisors. So thinking about what specific processes they might use to identify and invest in projects that promote peace building, for example, And if there's ways in which they measure progress in this area, and it might well be that they don't have those in place. And as Catholic organizations, we might be in a position to really do some leading and important work in that way. And so in the final section, the ACT stage, we look at how we can translate some of these insights into concrete investment policies that we can review, perhaps on an annual basis or more regularly as makes sense for the cadence of the finance meetings. Pope Francis, in his message for the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation in 2023, said that when we maintain a right relationship with God and humanity and nature, then justice and peace can flow like a never-failing stream of pure water nourishing humanity and all creation and all creatures. So by aligning our investments with these principles that promote peace and protect human dignity and care for creation, we can contribute to a more just and more stable world. We're called to be agents of peace, and our investments and our resources can be powerful tools in that mission.
I think it's time to hand over to Sister Susan. So,
okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this invitation. Operation Noah is a great partner for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace. And so Bokani asked me to just tell a case study of how we are striving to be a faith-based investor for a sustainable world. And so just to tell you a little bit about us, I'm obviously an American here. I'm on our congregation leadership team. I'm also a trustee of the UK charity. Our congregation was founded in England in 1884 by Margaret Anna Cusack, pictured here, Mother Frances Clare. And our original purpose in our constitutions was stated as to promote the peace of the church, both by word and work. And earlier, Bokani referenced Pope Leo, actually the 13th, who was the founder of Catholic social teaching. And he was the Pope when we were founded, and he met with Mother Clare. And Catholic social teaching has truly been part of our roots and our foundation from the beginning. Today, we name our charism as seeking peace through justice. We are one congregation, but from the very beginning, from the first 6 years, we have been in these 3 places, very far apart from each other. We're still in the United Kingdom. We're in the Eastern United States, where I'm coming to you from in New Jersey, and then in the Western US outside near Seattle. Our investment decisions are grounded in our governing documents. And so it's helpful, however, whether you are a diocese or a religious congregation or working with individuals, to name what your values are to guide your governing decisions. And for us, the way that we use our financial resources is central to our vow of poverty. So this section is in our constitutions, which are approved by the Vatican. They are our main governing document. And we say that the sharing of ourselves and our resources, which is integral to the vow of poverty, is central to our mission as peacemakers. We try to make our own the concerns of the human family and work to bring about the well-being of others, especially those who are poor and oppressed. So I think you see how Catholic social teaching is central in that. We further, in another section of our constitutions, specifically talk about material or financial resources, and that we administer them according to the criteria of justice in ways which witness to interdependence and collaboration in our efforts toward peace. And then even more specifically, in the directive section, we call ourselves to be alert to the policies of banks and corporations where our monies are invested. And we take care to see that our investments are used locally and globally in the service of life, justice, and peace. So this has long been our philosophy in how we use our resources. And in terms of climate change, care of creation has been integral to our understanding of the spirituality of peace. really as an adaptation or an application of what Volcani talked about going through that chapter on peace. You can't separate, as Pope Benedict said, if you want to cultivate creation or cultivate peace, protect creation. And I just want to go through a few of our own journey of how we've evolved in this understanding. So in 1990, our chapter, and the chapter happens every 6 years. It's when a religious congregation elects their leadership and then also sets their direction for the next few years. It's the highest decision-making body in the congregation. And so what we commit to there, the leadership team implements. So in 1990, the theme was One Creation, One Future. And one of the commitments made was to explore our institutional and personal practices that in terms of ecological soundness. At our 2008 chapter, which was the first that I attended, our chapter act specifically addressed climate change. And we looked at this in the context of our spirituality of peacemaking, which compels us to live in right relationship with the entire community of life. And in that commitment, two relevant commitments are that we would identify and reduce our carbon footprint, and then also pray, study, and act to promote a sustainable lifestyle, very similar to the See, Judge, Act model that is in the toolkit that Volcani produced. Now, practically, in the United Kingdom, where we have a charity there, our trustees sought to implement that 2008 Chapter Act in keeping with our commitment to using our material resources in a just way. And so in 2011, their first step that they took was to consolidate our UK investments and ask our financial advisors to evaluate our exposure to fossil fuel. And Volcani, I think one important thing that you said when you introduced the toolkit, in addition to the disclaimer that it is not financial advice, just that this is not financial advice, investment advice, but it is critical that you connect you consult with your advisors and have them be your partners in this. And that is really the way that this moves ahead. So in 2011, when they made that first consolidation, they also made a relatively small investment in a fund that was a climate active fund, just to test the waters and to see what impact that would have on our portfolio, but more importantly, our ability to live out our mission. Moving ahead, the congregation then in 2016 adopted a land ethic. And again, this was adopted by the whole congregation, and so it really is meant to be a guiding force as we move ahead. And three elements of that land ethic that are particularly relevant to this conversation is that we named that our decision-making must put sustainability before financial profit. So again, that is a values decision that we made as a congregation. We also committed that we would make decisions based on their impact for the whole community of life. And lastly, that these decisions are not only about our own profit and gain, as we said, sustainability over profit, but that we're also taking into account the needs of future generations and the future integrity of Earth, our common home. So with this commitment in 2016, this led the trustees in the UK, and these are the sisters who were the trustees at the time. One of them, Sister Bridgetta in the red striped sweater, is still one of our trustees. They decided in 2018 to fully divest the UK portfolio from fossil fuels. And so again, they worked closely with the investment advisors to find funds that were not dependent upon fossil fuels. And the divestment was effective in 2019, and we were part of one of Operation NOAA's global divestment announcements in May of 2020. Now, I think part of why we were able to make that jump to divest is that we have divestment in our DNA. In the 1980s, we divested as a congregation from nuclear and other instruments of mass destruction in keeping with our charism of peace. So the practical steps that, again, led to that decision were that we had to look at all that we had. So an honest look at our investments. We made the decision. to move to a climate active fund, and we divested completely. And that in the UK led eventually the entire congregation portfolio, including the funds that are in those two US regions, to also be divested. So we were part of a global announcement in 2022 that Operation Noah was involved in as well, where we announced our divestment. Now, as all this is happening, the church, the Catholic Church, had this amazing document that Pope Francis wrote, Laudato Si, and then invited all sectors of society and of the church to be part of what's called the Laudato Si Action Platform. So we as a congregation saw this as a natural fit with our own stance and our own approach in a way to be more effective and part of a global church. So we committed in 2021 to a 7-year journey to the Laudato Si Action Platform. And we felt that these goals were consistent with our ongoing work, but they gave us a framework of ecological economics, which is the third goal of the Laudato Si Action Platform, grounded in Catholic social teaching and really naming how ecology and economics are linked. So goal 3 of ecological economics in Laudato Si names, just as we already had in our land ethic, that profit and consumption-driven economic models are unsustainable and destructive, and that we really have to root our economics in right relationship. One of my favorite Pope Francis quotes, which I'm probably getting not correct, but is along the lines of that economics is meant to promote life, not to kill. And so demilitarization of economics at all levels is part of ecological economics, and also to promote alternative economic systems. So that was in 2021 that we signed on to the Laudato Si Action Platform. And then the next year, from one of the Vatican offices, this document on the right was introduced called Mensorum Bonum, which includes faith-based measures for Catholic investors. And as we compared our economic strategy with Mensorum Bonum, there really is a synergy here. So Mensorum Bonum calls faith-based investors to engage, and we as a congregation use our stock in corporations to be in dialogue. We really want to be in positive dialogues when that is a possibility, and we are bringing proposals to shareholders when that is necessary. So for the past 4 years, we have been proponents with Citibank, on Indigenous rights in climate financing, and bringing that to the shareholders and addressing how the risk of reputation and the reputational harm and business liability is a detriment not only to Earth and to the Indigenous communities, but to shareholders as well. Mensorum Bonum calls us to enhance, and so that is where our focus on impact investment, which our UK portfolio currently is 100% in impact climate active investing. Across the congregation, we're committed to having 10%. So an impact meaning that we are not only looking for profit and return, but more importantly, we're looking for the return to communities and to the environment. And then we also focus on charitable giving in that sense as well. And then the last call of Mensorum Bonum for faith-based inventors is to exclude, which is perhaps the more traditional way that we have thought of being faith-based investors. So we do have a Catholic social teaching screen on our investments across the whole portfolio. And we also are divested from weapons and from fossil fuels. So as I reflected on what enables us to be faith-based investors for a sustainable world, I think first and foremost that we are committed to informing our decisions with our values. That's why those documents are so important, and that they're grounded in our faith, in our scripture, and Catholic social teaching. Second is that we have trusted investment partners who understand our values. And so they are the experts on the financial side. We perhaps are the experts on the value side. And so we work together to make that fit. Third is that we do have a long-term mindset. and I'll tell you in a moment why that's very important, but we are long-term investors. And we have a strong direction from our chapter decisions, the highest decision-making body of the congregation. So what have we learned? First of all, our story with our UK climate active investing started with a very small investment. So if you start with small steps, that's okay. They can lead to bigger ones. And I recently heard a speaker say how if you think about a baby's steps, those are actually some of the most risky, brave steps you'll take in your life because you don't know where you're going to go and you might wobble and fall. So don't be afraid to start small. Second, we've learned that products do follow the demand. The use of our power and influence can change the investment culture, and we've seen that happen since we first started in 2011. And then this is very important, to be willing to ride out the ups and downs, but also stay true to your values. If I had given this talk 2 years ago, I could have told you that we've not had an impact on our bottom line by being climate active investors. Volatility is real, and that's not necessarily true. So it's also important to be in ongoing dialogue with your investment advisors and to do due diligence like you would with any investment. And lastly, and this is a quote of one of my sisters, who I think is on this call, Sister Terry Donahue, that we have a fiduciary responsibility to Earth and future generations. And that is something that we as faith-based investors can bring into the investment space. And lastly, Pope Leo, as Bokani pointed out, is continuing this tradition of Catholic social teaching. And this was from his homily on the launch of the new liturgy for care of purgation. And so he says that the unbreakable covenant between creator and creatures inspires our minds, it galvanizes our efforts to ensure that evil may turn into good, injustice into justice, and greed to sharing. And this, I think, encapsulates the goal of this work. We don't know what impact we'll have, but we need to use the resources that we do have. So that is our case study. And I hope that you found that interesting.
The Green Investment Declaration, which is an initiative that was launched last year by Operation Noah alongside our partners in the UK called the Just Money Movement, who are another ecumenical Christian charity who support churches and faith institutions to think about how their money has power and they can use that power in different ways to bring about a better world. So we have this initiative which we're asking faith institutions and churches at every level to sign up to commit to increasing the amount that they're investing in climate solutions and also speaking out about it, because we recognise that while churches do have significant funds put together, I mean, our kind of combined wealth is significant. What's also significant is our moral voice and speaking up about how we need to act differently and how society needs to push more into these areas. And as faith institutions, we still do have that power to be heard. And often we do see that when faith groups have been signing up to this declaration in the UK, there have been headlines about it. It's been reported in the press. There has been interest in, how are faith groups acting differently in this area. So do have a look at it. There's information on our website /investment, and you don't have to already have been moving your money into green sort of solutions already, and you don't have to have a huge amount of money either. You can join at an acorn level, which is where you commit to invest something into climate solutions in the next couple of years, but ensure that your investment policy reflects your values, as Sister Susan's been talking about, and reflect that intention to invest more in building a greener world. And then we hope to move people through the journey to acorn into a sapling and then finally into a mighty oak tree where more investments are being made. There's this nominal amount of 5% of assets here, which at the oak tree level, but we found actually that those that are coming in at oak tree level are already sort of more at sort of 18-20% of their investments in reality being in climate solutions, which is really encouraging to see that is the case. So yeah, do take a look, and we'd love to hear from you and have a conversation about how we can support you in not just joining this initiative, but also speaking out about it and using your voice to try and push wider society to invest more in this area.
Thank you so much, Claire, and a special thanks to Sister Susan for a really inspiring presentation, and I hope it would have been really informative for those who are starting out on this journey. So this is the final in our 4-part series, and all the other series and case studies are available on our YouTube, where this will also end up. So we do ask that you please do get in touch if you are starting on this journey midway and can provide us with more examples that we can share. I think it's really important that people get to see and know that this is what our church is doing. It makes me really happy as a Catholic to know that good work is happening, and any way that we can support and amplify that, we would be really happy to do so. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much.